Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah and today I thought I would film the mid-year calm tag rather than the mid-year freakout tag, because I'm generally just a person who is always stressed about something, so it's nice to not bring that stress into what is supposed to be my hobby, and I thought this was a really good idea. This tag was created by Leandra from Leandra the TBR0, so I'll leave her channel and original video down in the description. So question number one is thankfulness and what 2024 has given me thus far, and I think I've had a pretty tough year so far in terms of my health. I've made a full video about my health and sort of what's been going on in my life in a different video. I'll leave that one down below, but I was thinking about this question and just, you know, thinking actually this has been a really difficult year, but then also I have so much to be thankful for. I've travelled a lot this year, which is always really nice. I went to Amsterdam for New Year. I went with my husband and my son, and we went to the Pokemon exhibition at the Van Gogh Museum, which was amazing. It was such a nice experience, even though we were all quite unwell while we were there. I went and stayed in a cabin in the countryside for my birthday by myself. I have a reading vlog for when I was there. That was just amazing, and a much needed break. It was really calm and I was able to just take things really slow, so that was nice. I was able to take my family to Disneyland Paris in June and we had just an absolutely amazing time. My son's only 5 and he had such an amazing time there. It's amazing for disabled people. We just had such a positive experience. It was really accessible. He was able to go on pretty much every ride that we wanted to take him on, and he was able to just have a really calm experience that just catered so well to him. He met Mickey Mouse while we were there and I just was almost sobbing. It was such a beautiful moment, and just the cast members were so good with him, and that was a real highlight of the year so far. And I'm just really thankful that although my health has been poor, there have been moments of being able to just go out and experience nature and just see so many beautiful things. I live in Scotland and that just in itself is something to be really thankful for. There's so much beautiful nature, even just a really short walk from my house, and I've just been really appreciating spending time in nature. I really am thankful that I get to go swimming in the sea every week. So every Friday night I go to Portobello in Edinburgh, which is sort of on the North Sea coast, and I swim there. It's always freezing cold, but it feels incredible and it's just enriched my life in so many ways. This has been the first year that I've had a full-time job in a couple of years, because I took some time off working like a 9-to-5 job to be a carer to my son, and yeah, I'm back at work now and it's just been a really amazing experience. I feel so lucky to work with the company I do. It's a pretty small company based in Edinburgh and my boss treats me like a human being, and it's something that's wild to me. That's just something I haven't really experienced in a work setting before, so I'm really grateful for my job, even though the anti-capitalist at me just absolutely hates me saying that. I am really thankful to have the job that I do. I wish I didn't have to work, but I think because I do have to go out and earn money, this is like the best situation for me. I generally just think I have a really happy, magical life in spite of like the adversity in it. I have, you know, a small cozy house that really feels like home to me, and I always look forward to coming home to it at the end of the day. I look forward to seeing my son and my husband, and I have, you know, a very safe, nourishing relationship. The house is always warm enough. We always have enough food to eat. We don't have any conflict, and yeah, I just feel really lucky to have this life. And of course, access to so many amazing books. I'm really lucky that I have so many books on my TBR, more books than I could ever hope to read, and although that sometimes feels quite stressful, it's just such a privilege. And yeah, I just have a very happy, safe, secure life, and I'm so grateful for that. The second question is relaxation, which is the most relaxing book you've read, and for this one I'm going to go with Reach for the Stars by Michael Cragg. This is a history of pop music from 1996 to 2006, I think, and this was just such a joy to read. It was the first book I read this year, and it was such a nostalgia hit for me. So in this book we're following the pop scene in the UK, but more specifically England, I would say, in the mid 1990s to the sort of early 2000s, which was a time when I grew up listening to that kind of music, and it was just such a nostalgia hit for me. I really liked the way Michael Cragg talks about how pop music is sort of dismissed as like a genre not to take seriously, because its primary audiences are small girls and teenagers and gay men, and I think he just did a really good job of speaking about the importance of pop music and the cultural impact that it had. It was just, yeah, so good to read about the things that I remember living through. It's not all like relaxing, happy nostalgia trip. It talks a lot about racism and homophobia in the music industry around that time. It talks a lot about the culture of fat phobia and body shaming and just diet culture that was so prevalent, not just throughout that industry, just as a whole in like the late 90s, early 2000s. It's wild to read it, because obviously like I lived through it, but like to read about it as somebody who has all that knowledge now, and to look back on it and be like, that's what I was living through as a teenage girl, is just completely wild to me. So it does cover a lot of really important themes, but it's also, yeah, just, it was such a comfort read to me, and yeah, I learned a lot from it, but also it was just, yeah, just such a nice cozy read. It felt very familiar. The tone, the writing was just really funny, and yeah, I would recommend it, but only if you are kind of like late 20s to sort of mid 40s, I would say, I think, and you grew up in the UK. I think for anybody else, yeah, you might not get a huge amount out of it, but it's definitely more focused towards the British reader, I would say. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and it was definitely the most relaxing book that I've read, because I'm not a huge reader of relaxing books. Then we have Hydration, a book that I needed, and I'm gonna say Doppelganger by Naomi Klein for this one, in the sense that I know drinking water is good for me, I know it will make me feel better, but it's not something I always want to do, and I felt the same reading this book. It was amazing. I gave it 5 stars. I did really enjoy it, but it wasn't always something that I necessarily wanted to pick up, because it's quite, I don't want to say dense, it's a non-fiction book, and I think Naomi Klein writes about like big thinky ideas, but in a really accessible way, but it can be quite depressing to read about it. So the basic premise of this book is Naomi Klein is an established feminist writer. She's written a lot in the past about capitalism and the climate crisis, and just sort of how those two things intersect. She's also written a lot about feminism, and as a result she gets confused very often with another writer called Naomi Wolf, who's the author of The Beauty Myth in the 90s. So they brought out books at kind of the same time. They both have the same name, they're both same first name, sorry, they're both Jewish, and they both wrote about feminism, but that's kind of where the similarities between them end. Naomi Wolf is these days quite a prolific anti-vax conspiracy theorist who, despite having built her career on having quite leftist principles, is now sort of basically in cahoots with very right-wing personalities. So Naomi Klein talks a lot about Naomi Wolf's relationship with Steve Bannon and how they work together a lot in a professional context, despite, you would think, having very differing opinions. Actually that's not quite true, and actually a lot of Naomi Wolf's opinions now are very right-wing, or at least very right-leaning, and she's very sympathetic towards these very extreme political figures. And at first when I was reading it, I was just like, okay, well, I don't really want a whole book about how you're conflated with this woman. It doesn't seem like something I'm going to be that interested in. But I really liked the way she explores why these two seemingly very different people become conflated in people's minds, and it's less about just them having the same name and more just how they're both kind of fighting the same battle, they're just coming at it from very different viewpoints. So for example, she talks a lot about the COVID-19 pandemic, and how Wolf is now a big proponent of like not masking, and she's very anti-vax and very vaccine skeptic and critical, and Naomi Klein is just like, well, actually there is a good case for why these people would be very skeptical of this vaccine, because so much information has been hidden from us, and just the rollout of the vaccine program wasn't very good. A lot of information was hidden from people just so that they wouldn't get scared of it and they would have it, but this sort of lack of information has led to the opposite, and people are just like, oh, we're not being told very much about this, it's all very secretive and clandestine, and therefore it's something that we don't trust. She talks a lot about how people were skeptical of it because in the US healthcare is just so extortionately priced, and now people were just like, oh well, they're giving this to us for free, why would they do that? And people are just very distrustful of the government, as they should be, but they shouldn't be distrustful because of the vaccine rollout, if you see what I mean. Like, they're not untrustworthy because they're trying to give you a dodgy vaccine. They're untrustworthy because they don't have the well-being of the population at heart, you know. I really enjoyed reading. She talks a lot about how these conspiracy theorists seem to have really outlandish ideas, and you, like, on paper you just think, why would you ever believe in that? That's very obviously not true. But then she talks about like things that like have actually happened that are so outlandish that you wouldn't think would be allowed to happen, and they have, like that oil spill on the Gulf Coast that was just covered up and hidden from people, and it's just like, these awful things like are actually happening, like, and so when you have like these things that seem like they're just like too outlandish to be true, they like are actually true, and so it's not surprising that people are latching onto conspiracy theories. I don't think I've explained that very well. I just think basically what she's trying to suggest in this book is that whether you are left-wing or right-wing, we all have this inherent distrust of like the man, and that is very legitimate, but both sides of the political spectrum are focusing on different things and have sort of very different goals, essentially. I just thought it was really interesting. I think the way she speaks about disability rights is really good, and it's always refreshing to see disabled people included in discourse like this. And there is a section at the end which talks about the relationship between Israel and Palestine, and I think gives a really nuanced look at that political climate. It was written before the most recent genocide, but it's still very relevant, and it's talking a lot about how you can be an oppressed group for so long, like Jewish people, and have awful atrocities committed against you, but also be the oppressors as well. And I think she offers a really I don't want to say balanced look, because that makes it seem like she's sympathetic towards the state of Israel, and she's just not at all. but like I said, I do think she speaks about it with a lot of nuance, but also really conveys how urgent it is that Palestine is freed. And I think for all that she talks about how hopeless the situation can seem, and like it is very depressing to read these things, I do think you come away from the book feeling not necessarily hopeful, but like you feel energized to kind of make changes yourself. And just like, she doesn't just say all of these awful things are happening and it's hopeless. She talks a lot about community and how we can sort of come together to, if not overcome these issues, like we have a community to support each other and to support our mental well-being while living through this just awful time. And yeah, I think I didn't always necessarily enjoy reading about the things I was reading about, but I do feel like it did me some good to read it. The next question is Nourishment, a book that energised me, and maybe it's a weird choice for this one, but I'm going to go Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I read this for the first time this year and I was just so compelled. I haven't been that gripped by a book in a long time. I just wanted to keep reading. The writing was just exquisite. It made me gasp. I remember I was reading it on a train and there's like a kind of twist of sorts. It's not a particularly plotty book, it's more about the vibes, but like there's this particularly twisty part that made me actually audibly gasp on the train. I just had such fun reading it, and it's quite an intense, depressing, scary book, but yeah, I was just like so compelled and gripped. So this story follows a young woman who is she meets a man called Max de Winter when she's on holiday with her well, she's not really on holiday. Her employer is on a holiday and she is working as like not a maid but like an assistant, I suppose, to this very wealthy woman. She meets a man called Max de Winter who is recently bereaved and lives in an amazing manor called Manderley, and they end up getting married. She moves to Manderley and her employer warns her not to marry this man, and it's just like, he doesn't love you, and she's just kind of like, oh well, fuck you, I'm gonna do it anyway. And then when she gets to Manderley, she quickly realizes that yes, maybe her employer was right, that Max doesn't really love her and he's still very hung up on his ex-wife Rebecca, and so are all the members of staff in the house. You can really feel the spectre of Rebecca throughout the novel. It's very cloying and oppressive, and yeah, we're just really following that to find out, like, is this actually the ghost of Rebecca who is haunting this place, or is it just like the idea of her that is the haunting thing? And yeah, it was just so good. I really recommend it. Then we have Familiarity, an author I've returned to, and this one I'm going to say CJ Cook. I read A Haunting in the Arctic. I've read a lot of CJ Cook books before and I do really like her as a writer, although I think she's a little bit hit and miss for me. Some I really enjoy and some I don't enjoy so much. A Haunting in the Arctic was it was okay. It definitely wasn't a miss. It just wasn't one of my favourite CJ Cooks, but I always enjoy reading her stuff. She writes very atmospheric, creepy books, and this one follows a dual timeline like a lot of CJ Cook books do. So we're following a woman in the present day who is in Iceland exploring, I think her name's Dominique, and she is exploring sort of an old abandoned ship that's kind of like washed up ashore in Iceland, and it's about to be dismantled and removed, and she wants to film it for like her TikTok channel. She's like an explorer of like remote abandoned places, and she goes on board the ship to film it, and meets a group of people on the ship, and it's all very creepy and ghostly, and we think, oh, maybe there are some supernatural things happening. And then the other timeline, we're following a woman called Nikki in the 1910s, I think it is, and her father owns a shipping company, and she finds herself kidnapped and taken aboard one of the ships destined for Svalbard or somewhere like very far north basically. And we know that eventually these two timelines are gonna sort of like interlink, but we don't really know how that's gonna happen. Yeah, I thought it was good. The ending wasn't really to my taste. It explores female trauma, and I didn't really like its exploration of trauma. I thought it was a little bit on the nose, but yeah, it was atmospheric and creepy and page turning, and yeah, I'd recommend it. If you're a fan of CJ Cook, you'll probably like it. Then we have Reflection, How My Reading Tastes Have Changed, and I don't think they've changed that massively this year. I think one thing that has changed is that I'm really interested in children's literature again. It's something that I haven't read properly for quite a few years now. I've been like almost exclusively focused on adult literature, but I read You Wouldn't Catch Me Dead by Tess James Mackey, which is a young adult novel. It's kind of that cusp between like, it's just above a middle grade and kind of maybe just a little bit below a YA. It's a horror thriller set in rural Wales, follows a girl who goes on a camping trip with her school, and quite early on one of the teachers is killed. He falls off a cliff essentially, and the children find themselves left alone in these terrifying woods, not able to get out, and some sort of potentially ghostly things are happening. But yeah, this really compelled me. I thought it was really well written, genuinely scary in places. I liked the themes that it discussed. It explores coercive relationships and trauma and just the general like teenage experience as well. I thought the characters were really well written and really, to me, read like teenagers, which I think is quite rare. Yeah, really enjoyed that one, and it made me just want to pick up more children's literature. So I've got a whole TBR now on my library app where I've just like picked a few like popular kids books, and I'm just gonna try and get back into reading. Not necessarily YA, but definitely like middle grade especially. I'm really interested in. I also read Greenwild by Parry Thomas off the back of reading You Wouldn't Catch Me Dead, because I wanted to read more children's books, and I quite enjoyed that one too. So yeah, it's exciting that I have lots of books now that I can read sort of with a different perspective, because obviously children's books were what like kickstarted my love of reading, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to sort of falling in love again with children's books. Then we have Healthy Risk, a new to me author or like out of my comfort zone book, and for this one I'd say Owlish by Dorothy Say. This is translated by Natasha Bruce, I think, and I wasn't sure I would like this one because it's magical realism, and that tends to be a little bit hit and miss for me. It's set in Hong Kong and follows a professor at a prestigious university, and is set amongst like the backdrop of some student protests, and this fictional land called Nevers that it's set in. It talks about how it's trapped between the motherland, which is clearly like China, and the colonizers, which is Europe, but in particular England. And we're following this professor who isn't really in a loveless marriage. His wife seems great and like she really loves him and is into him, but he's just like, oh, married life is boring and I just want an affair. And then he falls in love with a life-size doll called Elise, and it's really just like talking about his relationship with this doll. And I think I missed a lot of context because I don't know a huge amount about Hong Kong, but I just really enjoyed reading it. It was very compulsive. You never really know like where you are, what is real. It's like it has a lot of portals in it, and plays with time, and yeah, I really enjoyed this. I described it, I think, when I first read it as Murakami for the girlies, and it read a lot to me like a Murakami book. But even though it features the objectification of women, that's very much written from the female perspective, and not just because the author has never had any meaningful interaction with a woman before. And yeah, it was a good time, and I didn't fully expect it to be. I didn't know what was going on a lot of the time. Like I said, I didn't get a lot of the context, and normally that would bother me, but it didn't really in this instance. And yeah, I just had a good time with it, and it made me think I need to read more books that are maybe not following a linear timeline. I tend to quite struggle with that. It's why I struggle a lot with magical realism. I tend to struggle when I find it hard to distinguish between what is real and what isn't. But yeah, for some reason I just really liked this one. Then we have Detox, which is a book or habit that I'm leaving behind, and I think I just need to stop reading as many thrillers. I have not enjoyed really any of the thrillers that I've read this year, and I've read a few. I've read a Catherine Ryan Howard. I normally really like her as an author, but I just hated The Trap that I read by her. I hated In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. I didn't really like Cut to the Bone. I didn't enjoy His and Hers by Alice Feeney. It's a shame because I do genuinely really like reading thrillers, but I think just because I've read so many of them, there's a finite number of like plausible twists that you can have, and so I feel like I'm probably at that point where I need something kind of mind-blowing to actually enjoy it, otherwise the ending isn't going to be particularly satisfying to me. So I think maybe I just need to take a bit of a break away from thrillers. I like to read them because they're easy reads, and if I'm finding myself in the mood to read but struggling to concentrate, I know I can rely on a thriller to be like compulsive, and even if I'm not particularly loving a book, I can still get some enjoyment out of it. But yeah, I've just been left so unsatisfied by the thrillers that I've read this year. I think if I could read something again like the Frida Klein series by Nikki French, I would love that. So if you have any recommendations for anything that's quite similar to that. I tend to not really enjoy like police procedurals because I find it really difficult to be on the side of the cop. So that's kind of why I like the Frida Klein series, because you're not really rooting for the police, you're rooting for Frida, who is she doesn't work with the police. So yeah, if you could recommend me anything like that, then that would be much appreciated. Then we have Positivity, anticipated book events or releases, and so many book releases that I'm excited for towards the end of this year. We have well, we've just had the new Juno Dawson come out, which I read and didn't really like, which was a shame. We've got Sally Rooney coming next month. We've got new Olga Tokarczuk coming next month. I have a proof for that. I'm so excited. I want to read that in August. We have the new Eliza Clark coming out in November, I think, which I can't wait to read. The new Jacqueline Wilson. I'm rereading the Girls series at the moment, which is one that I read when I was a young teenager, and it's you can tell it was written in the late 90s, but she's written like an adult sequel to that series now. I'm looking forward to seeing what Ellie, Magna and Nadine are like now as grown-ups, but I'm also like a bit worried that it won't have progressed very well and they'll still be very hung up on like their weight and stuff. So yeah, I'm excited for that one, but also a little bit scared. But yeah, just so many books that I'm really excited to read, mostly in September, but a few towards the end of the year as well. I'm also just really excited for like autumn and winter and like being cozy and like all the spooky books that I can read. I'm enjoying the summer this year, not that we've had a huge amount of it, but like I'm not really ready for summer to end yet, but also when it does, it'll be nice to have those like Halloweeny books to look forward to as well. Then finally we have Looking Ahead, which is personal plans or goals, and I set myself a goal at the start of this year to reduce my TBR by 100 books. I have added 96 books to my TBR since then. So it's not going well because I definitely have not read anywhere near that off my TBR. So I think maybe we'll just scrap that goal and I'll just try and not focus so much on reducing my TBR and just treat it more as like a pile of possibilities rather than books that I absolutely must read. Most of them are just like on my library wish list or on my Scribd wish list. I haven't bought that many physical books, but I do want to finish all the books that I have bought in 2024. I want to have them all read by the end of the year. I think there are about 8 of them, so it's a, you know, a reasonable target. I might do a whole video about that actually. It might be quite a fun vlog to do. For my other goals, I was gonna say I want to film more videos, and that is true to an extent. My uploading has been, like, since I started my channel, my uploading has been very sporadic, which is partly what contributes to like my channel still being really small, I think, because I don't have any like consistent upload dates. But I really have to be honest with myself that I don't have the time to be consistent, like that I'm never gonna be able to upload like a video a week or even just a video a month. I just cannot commit to that. So a bit of background into my life, I work full-time Monday to Friday, and I also have a family. I have a husband and a son. My son has multiple complex disabilities and I'm a full-time carer alongside my full-time 9 to 5, and I have my own disabilities. I have a chronic illness which causes a lot of fatigue and brain fog, so I have, I would say, probably less time than the average booktuber, but time isn't really like the barrier at the moment. It's more the desire for videos to be perfect, and I have all these ideas for how I want to edit a video, how I want to film a video, what I want to say, and because I have such a small window for filming these, if I don't like how I look that day, or I'm just finding that I'm sitting in front of the camera and just tripping over my words and it's just like the thoughts aren't coming out, or if I think I filmed this video but I don't have time to edit it the way I want it to be edited, I just end up not uploading it, and I think it's really sad, and I'd like to get more confident at just pulling the camera out. Like some days I'll just be really in the mood for filming and have lots of ideas, but I just think I can't be bothered doing my makeup, or I hate the way I look today, and I really want to push through that and just let go of this desire for everything to be perfect. It's not exclusive to YouTube. I'm just like that in all aspects of my hobbies. I started doing an embroidery, but because I messed up one stitch and realised, like, after I'd finished a section, I was just like, well, I'm not gonna complete that now because that stitch is wrong. And my husband looked at it and was like, I can't tell that it's wrong, but I can. And yeah, if I'm not doing something perfectly, I feel like it's not worth doing, and that's such a toxic mindset to be in, and it really sort of hinders me from doing a lot of things that I actually want to do. So I'm gonna try and get over that fear of not looking my best, and you know, I just think, oh, I can't be bothered putting any makeup on today, so I can't film a YouTube video. And it's like, I wouldn't put makeup on to just do a normal day in the office or to go to the shop. I use makeup just when I want to dress up a little bit, but I feel really pressured to sort of look a certain way, I suppose, and yeah, I just want to get out of that mindset, because really there is nothing wrong with the way I look with or without makeup. This is what I look like, and it's fine, and it's okay to take up space when I'm not looking like the best version of myself. So yeah, I want to make more videos, but I need to get over that sort of that barrier of wanting everything to be perfect. On a more positive note as well, I would also like to film some writing vlogs, because I feel like I've really got back into writing this year, and like it's not something that I'm taking seriously. I'm writing a book, but it's not something that I have like plans to get published or anything. It's just something that I want to do for me, for fun. And yeah, I'd like to do some more writing vlogs, because they're some of my favourite content to watch, and it would sort of spur me on to do writing, because that is another thing affected by the perfectionism. It's just like, oh, this doesn't read like the authors that I read, who've been doing this for years and years and have really honed their craft. Like why aren't I writing like a best-selling author the second time I sat down to write anything in about 20 years? So yeah, to recap, care less about the number of books on my TBR, try and find a way to get out of his mindset that everything has to be perfect, and film more writing vlogs. So that was the mid-year calm tag. Thank you so much to Leandra for creating this tag. I really enjoyed doing it. It's such a good antidote to the mid-year freakout tag, which I feel like is the antithesis of my channel, where I try to be a slow reader and just a slow person in general. I'm not always successful with that, because I don't have the kind of brain that just lets me slow down and take life easy, but I'm trying. So yeah, thank you to Leandra. I'll leave her channel and the original video in the description. If you have got this far and you would like to comment but you don't know what to comment, you can leave an emoji. Maybe leave a bat emoji, because I'm excited for autumn, like cozy spooky season, and now we're almost into August as I'm filming this. It's not long, we don't have much longer of summer left, so yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again in another video. Bye.